Hey everyone, Glenn Sanford here, and as many of you know, if you listen to this podcast, I am the founder of eXp Realty. Well, you probably don't need to listen to that if you're around real estate. However, founder of eXp Realty and host of the Expansion Podcast. And today I've got Chuck Gollop. He is a four-time ICON agent out of Minnesota and Florida. And today I think what we're going to try to talk a little bit about is how do you run to a real estate team in two disparate markets. So, hey, welcome, Chuck.
Hey, Glenn. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for jumping on. So, you're obviously doing well. Been in the business. Came from a company that you and I have in common, I believe. But you've really grown quite an interesting business. Maybe you could just kind of describe, where you came from, how you got into real estate, and how you ultimately made your way to eXp.
Yeah, thanks for the intro. It looks like you've done your research, which is great. And I apologize, I'm just coming off a case of COVID, so I'm a little hoarse. But I actually fell into real estate. I've dubbed myself the accidental realtor, which I think many of us are anyway. I don't think a lot of people end up in real estate by design. At the age of 3, growing up wanting to be a realtor. Most of us fall into it. I always say you got thrown out of something else, you failed from something else, and you ended up in real estate. Either you're great at it or maybe you're not. But I was in law enforcement for 25 years, and I had to retire medically after getting injured a couple times. One was pretty significant. I was in the hospital for about a month. And I had a pension, which is a great position to start from. It gives you a little leverage. You don't need to burn your boats. They're already burned. I went into comedy.
Right.
So I did stand-up comedy off and on for about 7-8 years, but I did it full-time for about 2 years. Traveling the country in my very old Toyota, making $200 for a weekend of telling jokes in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in the middle of the winter.
Okay.
And a divorce, and the fact that comedy wasn't paying the bills and my pension was affected by the divorce, I decided I need to do something. My last resort, absolute last resort, was real estate. So, and it just took off because I had a sphere, which was just amazing. It allowed me to form a team, and I went to that brokerage you mentioned. We won't mention any names, but went to that brokerage, went to another baby brokerage, and that whole baby brokerage, and I've often been blamed as the impetus for it. We all went to eXp, and it was the multi-state problem because I was at that company. I went down to Florida and said, I love Florida. I need to be a realtor in Florida. I went to the broker and said, how are we going to solve this dual state problem? Because you're not licensed as a broker in Florida. And she said that eXp had been calling and that we should go to the conference. And excuse me, we did. And we all signed up, the whole brokerage that day. Excuse me. So it got us, it fixed the multi-state problem for us. It was incredible.
Right. Yeah. No. It's interesting because before eXp, there really was no solution for multi-state. I mean, you had multiple franchise owners that all needed to get their pound of flesh, and so as a result, you're kind of stuck with the systems that we had. In fact, well, I ran you probably knew this about me. I think I shared on stage, but I ran teams in 6 different states at the old brand, and so we paid caps and had to negotiate with the team leaders, and then we had all this sort of nobody really liked the idea that we had top producing teams in their office that was sort of sending referral fees up to our office. So there was a bunch of just political sort of stuff that took place there. So it was definitely on the radar of things we needed to solve if we started our own brokerage, which obviously we did. So
yeah, it's incredible. And actually, you and I at one point had talked at a Brent Gold event. We talked about that company. We keep saying that company. We'll change the name legally to let's call it Schmeller Williams, so no one can recognize it. But we talked about just how their model had, they've tried to evolve it a little bit to keep up. Because I mean, it's all you, Glenn. You created this model that now other people have copied. And I was just recently watching another video that discusses how eXp is built, and that whole middle tier disappearing, and from basically you, the founder, down to the agent is one basically flat tier across all these states. It's incredible.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy, and there's lots of cool stuff on the way. We've got a lot of stuff in the works to just improve and make better what we're already building here. So, um, obviously you had the multi-state problem. You wanted to build a team in 2 states. How has that worked? I mean, that's I know how I did it, but what has been your journey in running a multi-state effectively team, or mini brokerages inside of EXP? In some respects, you could think about it that way too.
Yeah, well, I mean, as a team leader, I'm still in production, and I live in Minnesota half the time. I live in Florida half the time. You know how real estate is. The minute you get on an airplane, someone calls you and says, "I need to write a contract." That alone solves the problem. So having even just a small network to back me up in each state. When I'm in Minnesota, I don't tell people I'm not in Florida. I use the word. I'm really conscious to use the words here. I'm here, not there, down there with my clients. So they don't notice the difference. I just say, one of my colleagues is going to be helping you. They're going to do the walkthrough today. I'm unavailable. So that alone has fixed that problem. But I had a pretty good sized team in Minnesota, with a number 2 managing things for me. Excuse me 1 second. Just got over COVID. It's been fun. That was able to keep running pretty well. And when I'm in Florida, that team sort of runs itself. I'm now growing the Florida team. And Florida real estate is very different than Minnesota because it has 40 MLSs. So a lot of times we get a lot of, obviously, transplant people calling up saying, "I want to look at a house." And they might start by me, and then they end up 10 hours away in northern Florida. So I really have to have a network of agents that can help me. And so I've kind of built my team with that geographical problem in mind.
Right. Now, Florida, you bring up an interesting sort of point. Do you notice a particular type of demographic of consumer? It sounds like they're could be all over the place. Do you see them sort of just moving like across town move? Where's that, or what's the contrast between a Florida buyer and a Minnesota buyer?
That is a wonderful question, and a lot of it's market driven because in most areas of Florida, recently there's been as much as 7.6, 8 months inventory. In Minnesota, typically around 2. So they are in that respect already completely divergent. But the other thing is that with Florida, most of our clients are transplants. So we deal with a lot of foreign buyers, a lot of out-of-state buyers. And we haven't been dealing with a ton of in-state transplants, both for sales or buyers. A lot of investors. And that, and thanks to EXP's platforms, Express Offers, for example, we are able to leverage that with our investors and really build up the institutional investor network. So we're very heavy on that in both states, but Florida in particular, it's been just phenomenal.
Okay. And are you finding a lot of people that move for tax reasons, or is it just or lifestyle, or is it accommodation?
Yeah, I don't know if you've been following the news, Glenn, but there's this thing coming up. It's an election. Yeah. So that is the number 1 chat that is happening, I think, in Florida. It is a very political state. It is very, very, very political. So a lot of people move there, number 1, for the politics. I would say a close second, believe it or not, would probably be the taxes, because you get a huge tax break. We have the income tax generally doesn't exist for most people. There's no state income tax, which is significant. And it's a very welcoming community for retirees or pre-retirees like me. So the demographic is just very, very different. And I think it's just a lifestyle thing. You're from a cold climate, you get it. At some point, you're buying it. I've had enough.
I will be in South Florida later on this year. So I mean, not just for EXPCon Miami, but I'll be spending a little time down there. What's your management style or philosophy? How do you run 2 separate teams, and how do you do it successfully, or where are things maybe not working as well as you'd like it to?
Well, I consider my leadership style tyrannical. No, I'm kidding. I really believe in collaborative leadership. Lead from the front. So when I was a police sergeant, I was out taking calls. When I was everything I've done in life, I believe to be credible, you have to be doing it. So lead from the front and be a servant leader. So that's just built into my style. But we're very collaborative. We have every single morning, the whole team, Florida, Minnesota, we meet every morning for a morning huddle, just a quick 15-minute to half-hour update on the market, what everyone's into, urgent issues. We have weekly team meetings, usually on Zoom. And once a month, I meet with whichever wing of the team I'm with. Because I think it's important that, we meet in person. We get so used to doing everything virtually. And I believe that, the agent should have a part. So I don't really make huge decisions without checking with them, because I really believe in buy-in. No one is ever like getting a memo. Nope, we're doing this. Leadership says we're doing that. And if you look at the way EXP is run, it's the same thing. Here you go. Here's our platform. Run with it. But we want you to have some say in how things go. So that's how we run the team too.
Awesome. No, good stuff. So, what are you using? The same CRM, or using different CRMs? How are you doing sort of that team orientation around leads and accountability and follow-up?
So yeah, that's another great question. So right now we use KV Core. I love that it's just out of the box, ready to use. By the team add-on, it gives me a lot more functionality. One of the limits of KV Core is we only get one team number. And the only real reason that bothers me is in Florida, they're really sensitive to area codes on phones because they're tired of people like me. Well, you
okay, yeah.
So that's probably been the biggest limitation. But for now, I really like KV Core. I'm terrified of having to switch, although we are researching a couple options. I think we'll stay with KV Core. But it allows me as a team leader the accountability, see who's in KV Core, who's doing what, who's calling the leads. Listening to phone calls, I think, is a great training tool for me and the agents. And we use a system called CTE that tracks productivity and calls and dials and all that stuff. And I think it's just important for the agents to know what their numbers look like too. And if they're not closing things, where in the pipeline are the gaps?
Right. What CRM are you considering? Are you seriously thinking about making a move, or are you just kind of dabbling in other CRMs?
Yeah, well, I love that Follow Boss is part of, or Inside Real Estate combined. So Follow Boss, I'm sure you know this, and KV Core. I actually found this out in an EXP event the week they combined right before one of our conferences. So I think that I could make the switch a little better. I've heard that the AI at Follow Boss is better. I know that you can get different numbers, and I think there's probably more functionality. But I want to be careful not to jump into something that I don't think I can learn as well as I should, and maybe topple the apple cart a little bit.
Right. Well, and speaking of AI, how are you incorporating AI into your business or your daily workflows?
Not enough. I've used it for some projects like creating some spreadsheets and other things within the business. Mostly, I'm sure you hear this from a lot of agents, I use it to write listing descriptions. It's been great.
Right.
I do a lot with my blog and newsletter and stuff. We have a newsletter for clients. We really are leaning into client stuff. So it saves me a lot of time as I write stuff. I like to have a humorous voice, which I love that AI can kind of mimic my voice a little bit. So, but I'm not using it to the level I should.
Right. Do you use any? Have you developed any custom GPTs for your team at all, or is that just not even on your radar?
It is. Well, I'd like to say it's on my very, very distant radar. I don't know. I talk to a lot of team leaders, and I feel like the team leaders can be really into this stuff. But if you don't get everyone else truly involved, you either have to have amazing admin or a team leader with the brain for it, and I may not have the brain for it. So,
okay.
I dabble. I want to get there, and I know there's a time to jump on it, which needs to be now before everyone else does. So,
yeah, no, for sure. I was just at OpenAI yesterday, and I was there with Seth Siegler, and a lot of stuff that's coming down the pipe is really cool, and I think it's really going to be one of those things that those who jump on early and build it into their workflows and how they work with teams, their team and that type of thing, they'll definitely get advantages. I'm not sure how much they will as a small team, but the larger your team gets, I think the more AI has to play a significant role in how you organize your team, because you basically have the smartest mind in the world as a teammate to help you stress test different ideas as you try to scale. So that's kind of the way I think about it.
Yeah, well, I'm guessing it'll be part of our breakouts here at EXPCon, and that it should be something I should sign up for. Yeah, it's it is critical, and I love that we built it into our platform as well. We have our own AI, and a lot of the technology we use has AI built in, so there's a whole framework ready to pounce on.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so Chuck, maybe what we'll do is kind of wrap up here, but one of the things I'd like to just kind of get your feedback on is, obviously you obviously mentor a number of agents. I think you've got a good number of agents on your team. And so you kind of have got the question of, how do I become successful in real estate? And if you were to answer that question for an agent at EXP, and they say, hey, I want to build a business like Chuck has, what would be a single or two most important items that you would think is important to be able to build that business?
I think, and I've heard this a lot lately. I love that. Great question, obviously. Consistency, and I forgot the saying is that I heard recently. Consistency trumps, maybe you've heard this? I don't know. But I can't remember the second half of it. But to me, consistency is the most important thing. Getting up, having a routine, having it in your calendar, having it time blocked, working on your business, not in your business, on your business, and being consistent about it. Making lead gen and outreach and business development, whether you're a single agent or an ICON agent or a mega team leader, it is critical that you put your phone down, stop running around for clients, and build your business with consistency. I think it's the most important thing right now. If you look at the stats, it used to take 8 calls to get through to a cold lead. And if you made it to the 8th call, you were the only person calling. Well, now it takes 15 calls. So more than ever, you have to be consistent about whatever you're doing to build your business. So I think that's the most important thing. And I think the second most important thing is really simple. And I think people have forgotten about this, but be present. Answer the phone for your clients. Treat every client like they are the number one person. And particularly right now with buyers, because we've been so focused on doing this for sellers and showing our value and beating out every other listing agent on something. We have to do that now for buyers. So you have to show your value. You have to meet with them. You have to meet with the spouse. You have to come up with a plan. You have to show your value, and you have to be consistent and present moving forward.
Awesome. Well, good stuff. Thank you so much again for jumping on here, Chuck. If somebody wants to connect with you or follow up with you, what would you recommend they do?
So if you go to betterbookgollop.com, it takes you right to my calendar. You can book a Zoom appointment, a phone call, any of that stuff. But I am a monster on Workplace. So if you go to Workplace, you can message me, find me. Those are great ways to find me. And if you don't have Calendly, by the way, get yourself Calendly. It's very handy. Better.
Oh, there you go. Very cool. Well, thanks again, Chuck. Thanks everyone for listening. Hopefully you got some great tips and ideas how to build a multi-state team that's geographically separated by a couple thousand miles almost.
1,400.
And yep, 1,400 miles. So pretty amazing. So thanks again, and till the next podcast, everyone. Wishing you all success out there in the field. So with that, take care.